Okay, folks, Lorraine, quiet. The moment I start a video, she's gotta pop in there. She upstages me all the time. Can't believe it. Look, I'm freezing my ass off here. I did check. My generator has enough oil to run safely, so it's running in the background. I don't quite start up anything just yet, but I'm going to reach over here and start the space heater. I can't wait till I get this rig taken care of. You're seeing the sunlight in the background. It's nice and blue out here. It's virtually clear, and it got cold last night. And I'll tell you something. I forgot how much cold air helps a guy sleep. So I'm looking forward to hanging out more and shutting off the power at night. Can't run it anyway. This system is supposed to be so nice, so beautiful, so exquisite, so highfalutin, high-end, that I should be able to have heat anywhere and take showers anywhere. And well, I filled up with water yesterday, but I'm going to go run for oil before generator's down a little bit. Just has enough to run it, but I'm going to go run for oil. I'm going to probably buy 3 big bottles because I'm going to run this generator a lot. I'm amazed at the solar systems people are putting on some pretty small rigs. I mean, they're putting on enough so that they have independence. That's how strong independence is in the States. At least that's how strong it was till we created this welfare state. And may goddamn Lyndon Baines Johnson for killing our president and instituting a welfare state and handing everything over to Israel. How do you think Israel got nukes? Johnson gave them. They ran the bombs to Israel. They ran the fissionable material to Israel. That's the whole reason they killed our president, is because Kennedy said, basically, he said something and he didn't realize who was listening to him. He said, Israel can have nukes over my dead body. And the Prime Minister of Israel heard that. And he made sure that Kennedy died. I don't know if this double reflection is good or not. I got a reflection on the surface of the glass, and then I got the camera vision of myself coming back. They're going after your chickens. They're going after everything. They're going after all of your food. These are the same bastards that did the genocide in the Ukraine, the Holodomor, not once. They did it twice. That's what gets me. And if you find out I'm wrong, then tell me and correct me. I just don't know. I just heard that Ben Davidson at Something Observers mentioned me, and that's how a fellow found me. I think it's quite a compliment that you know, Ben Davidson acknowledged me. Now, I have to tell you that I discovered him after, oh my God, the fellow who's up there, up in the passes, up in Colorado, mentioned him. Oh, the Leak Project. Got a reference from the Leak Project over to Diamond with 3 master's degrees and his head up his ass. I mean, I'm sorry, the guy just rankles the hell out of me, and he's not open to having a real conversation and a real discussion about things. He's open to deriding people, and it's really easy to do in a one-way communication. But anyway, Diamond's an intelligent fellow. Don't get me wrong, and he's got some ideas that are pretty interesting. I do not direct you away from him completely. Papagosa Springs up in the peaks, they got that valley to themselves. They're pretty smart for doing that. And they've also been able to raise money for things, which is smarter than I am, because I haven't been able to raise much of anything. I've got a fellow who was going to do t-shirts for me. I wanted a letter in exchange because my memory's not so good, and I don't even know his last name. I don't know where the hell he lives. You know, I'd like to have, but I guess that offended him, and he wanted a gentleman's deal. No, you can have a gentleman's deal, but we'll see what goes. I've got some incredible pictures for the t-shirts. So beautiful you wouldn't believe it. But we got to get those out there. So, and I don't know how I'm going to market them. I'm going to have to do a lot more work. I see I've already got a couple of messages here in the morning. I'm just going to relax here a little bit more with you. They're after us, folks. They're not going to back off. You think that electing Trump solves your problems. And no, it doesn't. In many ways, you'd be better off with Kamala Harris for president. Why? Because at least we'd be fighting then. At least we would know who the enemy is. But this guy, you don't know. No, you don't know. And I think he didn't put his hand in the Bible for good reason. Because he had already put his hand on the Jews book, probably the Talmud, and became Jewish in 2017. I don't know, but if that's the case, then why can't the man be honest about it? Just say, hey, I like the tenets of Judaism and I converted. Folks, you need to read some of the Babylonian Talmud and become familiar with it. You need to look at some of the things that go on with the Mohammedanism, the Islamic religion, and the Quran, and read that as well, and realize that there's evil and wicked in both. Now, not to quite be outdone, there's some evil in the Bible too. There's a lot in there, and we don't like talking about it. And a large part of the problem is we don't understand it. And so we can't put it in a proper place. We can't get it in proper context. Most of that stuff we cannot read in context. And it's a shame, because if we could, we would realize the Bible's telling us the whole story. It really is. If you want to have chickens, you better start getting them now, because they're going to make it illegal everywhere. And do yourself a favor, don't bother with the rooster. The rooster's going to crow and give your ass away. I know you've got to have one, but if you can, silence that guy somehow so he can't crow. They are going to take away our food as best they can. They're going to starve us out. They're in for the long haul. These are intergenerational families that have taken this, and it's also interlocking families. Yes, these families pass it on. That's why they intermarry so damn much. And let's get to what the world order is. I didn't say the New World Order. I said the world order. The world order is a bunch of interlocking corporate boards with the same people sitting on them. And the thing is that with the stock market, you've got the ideal sucker system set up. You have the ideal system of theft set up. But you got to have three different things going on to be able to do that theft. You got to own the government, which is what's happened. They own this government. And then you got to have a fake money system, which is the Federal Reserve System, that money monopoly. And the third thing is you have to have a dumbass population that's so full of themselves and such egoistic, narcissistic bastards that they don't believe anybody's out there who can kick their ass, or anybody out there is going to want to harm them because they're so goody two-shoes. They're so good. Nobody would do that to me, Dr. Kent. Why would they want to do that to me? Who in their right mind would ever think that way? You need to stop asking dumbass questions like that. So let me explain it to you. Cain was born from Gadriel in the garden. Now, when I first started hearing about all this stuff, they were talking about the two-seed theory. Well, I'm up in Alaska reading the Bible by myself. I talk to my buddy Andy on the phone once in a while. I get a CD in the mail from Pastor Jerry Wiki once a week. And I didn't understand what they were talking about. So what did I do? I come up with my own theory. I filled in the missing spaces. And sometimes I fill them in wrong, okay? I'm just going to tell you that right now. But at least I'm actively trying to sort it out and trying to figure it out. Cain was fathered by a fallen angel named Gadriel. That's how we got, well, his nickname was Gad, which we eventually morphed it into God. That's how we got the name for God. So it's like, which God? That's what I ask. They say, oh, God this, God that. Yeah, which God? Which God? There's so many gods in the Bible itself. So which God are they talking about? Even the Bible references other gods using that same name, God. It makes it rough on a guy. You don't know how to chase that down. You don't know what the referent is. And to make it even worse, by the time Ptolemy II was alive in Alexandria, Egypt, in 274, 275, 276 BC, when he was producing this Septuagint, he had the 70 elders translating the Hebrew Aramaic Bible into Greek. Why? Nobody was reading Hebrew anymore. Nobody was reading Aramaic anymore. All the Israelites were speaking Greek. The vast majority, millions, were speaking Greek. How did that happen? We were captured. We were taken out by the Assyrians. The Assyrians said that Yahweh, our God, commanded him to do this. It wasn't even his God he was serving, but he was doing what Yahweh told him to do. I don't know if that was just a sales aspect, or maybe Yahweh, I think Yahweh really used them, just like Yahweh used Nebuchadnezzar, used Babylon. So they hauled us out about 722 BC in three giant migrations. Three giant military excursions, and we could consider it four, depending on how you want to read it. 3 or 4 military campaigns into the northern house of Israel. They took out all 10 tribes, plus they took out most of the southern, and they left Jerusalem. They didn't get all the walled cities at first, but they got those before, and then they didn't get Jerusalem. And so they ended up with members of all the tribes settled over there in 3 landmarks in the Bible. I don't know if I can find this for you in time. I will try to find this, and I'm not going to tell you everything about it, but you need to know this stuff. Oh boy, I usually use my cell phone and Google to search the Bible, because I figure the more I input good stuff into it, the more good stuff will come out of it. So the problem is that there's a fivefold witness. Actually, there's 2 fivefold witnesses in the Bible, and this is one of them. And the first one was, thou shalt not intermarry with the Canaanites. That's what the first of the 5 witnesses was. Yeah, I'm remembering it as we're talking about it. So it basically says, you will not take the daughters of the people of the land to be wives for your sons, and you will not give your daughters to be wives for the people of the land. Why was that? The Canaanites were descendants of Cain. Cain was fathered by a fallen angel. In other words, satanic DNA. And God didn't want his family, that's right, his family he placed upon the earth. He didn't want his family intermarrying with him, and the devils wanted to be God. So they figured, well, we marry God's daughters, Papa's got to accept us into the family. Sorry, didn't work that way, did it? So you're not supposed to intermarry with the people of the land. And it ain't racist. It has to do with the DNA. Well, I guess that is racist. You tell me. So, the first fivefold witness in the Bible. The second fivefold witness in the Bible are these 3 landmarks where everybody was settled. And I don't think I can look those up right offhand, but I'll try, see if it's back in here. The river was Hebor, H. I doubt it's going to show up in this, and I can't think of the name, but maybe you can out there if you can, and put this stuff down in the notes for me and for my benefit too, because I'm not here just for your benefit. I'm here for my benefit too. I want to learn. So I'm looking, and it's not in this very short concordance back here. I'm looking for it. It's not Haran. It's something else. 3 places in Asia Minor. Okay, I'm going to skip on that right now. Sorry, can't find it. I'll have to make a video about that. I really need to get up on speed on that one. So these are 3 landmarks that are repeated 5 times in the Bible. 5 different sections of the Bible. 5 witnesses. So, and basically that was to let us know that the Israelites were in those areas. That's where they were settled. And the people from Jerusalem were pulled out by Nebuchadnezzar's troops, pulled down to Babylon. And they were in 2 or 3 places down there on the rivers. They were kept separately. And the important thing that you need to know is that when the time came for freedom, the house of Israel did not go back to the promised land. It says in there the prophet told them they would never go home. So what did they do? They bolted across the Caucasus mountain range. That's why we're called Caucasians. They don't want us to know that we're called Caucasians after the Caucasus mountain range. Why is that? Because if you knew that, you might say, well, where did we come from before that? And then you would realize, what? You're saying we came from Israel, the northern house of Israel? Yes. It means you're the real deal. I know you go to church and they lie to you all the time that you're a frickin' Gentile. What's a Latin word, gentilius, doing in a Bible that wasn't written in Latin at all? There's a few more Latin words in the Bible, by the way. They tossed them in there to throw us off. So they played this big fraud on the whole world, and they're going to keep going with it. And they love it because you worship them. You consider them the chosen people. Bullshit. They aren't the chosen people. Most of them have been dragged along for the ride of deception as well. Most of them don't understand what's going on. Most of them aren't taking part in these diabolical, satanic religions and worship and all this programming that's going on. Most of them have no idea. Most of them are defensive, overly defensive, because the world's going up against them. Well, the problem is they were infiltrated by the Canaanites. And that first infiltration, well, I find myself going back to my version of the two-seed theory. The two-seed theory, as originally proposed, I found out later, was that you had Adam and you had Cain. You had good and you had evil. You had Abel, then you had Cain. You had a line of good and a line of evil. And what they had in common was they had the same mother. Eve was the mother. But what I came up with is that you had one man who intermarried with the Canaanites, and his name was Cain. No, I'm sorry. I'm throwing it around a little too much. Ishmael intermarried with the Canaanites. We don't have good data on that. It's not really explicit in the Bible, but it makes sense. And not only that, Esau intermarried with the Canaanites. And we have good data on that. He took 2 Canaanite women to wife, and that's in the Bible. So I believe the two-seed theory was the two bad seed theories. They're both bad. the Ishmaelites, through which we do get the Muslims, and the Edomites, or descendants of Esau, the Edomites. Esau became named Edom, red. And from that group, we ended up with a weird bunch of Jews. It's the best way to look at it. It's the reality. Let's spit the truth out there. Esau settled at Mount Edom, which is also known as Mount Seir in the southern part of Israel. And they had really weird laws compared to the Israelites. Israelites, they could only place one of their own kind as king over them. They weren't allowed to have an outsider. Whereas those at Mount Edom, their law was, they didn't trust each other very much, because their law was none of them could become king over them. The king had to come from outside, so they would recruit people from outside to be their kings, because they trusted them more than they trusted themselves. Why is that? Things went pretty well until a man named John Hyrcanus, Hycannus, decided to run the line of defense, so to speak. The Maccabean revolt, the rebellion. And if I can get the years right, it was 143 BC when John Hyrcanus, after 4 or 5 years of war, prevailed. And he told the Edomites that were there that he would let them live, made them a deal, made them an offer they couldn't refuse. He would let them live provided they converted to Judaism, worshiped the one true God, got circumcised. Or he's going to put them to death. So you know what they did. They volunteered to have their foreskins cut off, and they became in the mainstream. And they got into the mainstream to the point where Herod the Great was an Idumean or Edomean, which is the Greek word for Edomite. And it's important you recognize that. It's important you realize that there's been a lot of Edomites in power. The Emperor Constantine, he was Herod the Great's great-great-grandson. You need to understand the evil one's been there the whole doggone time. The wheat and the chaff, separating the two, like Yeshua said, like the Messiah said. You can't do it, not without destroying a lot of the wheat. So my two-seed theory, or the seed of evil, has 2 lines in it. One being Ishmael, and the other one being Esau. Now, to understand the Middle East, I'm going to explain it to you. The politicians down in Washington, D.C., they don't give a damn about this. They're busy serving their bankers and making sure that their Jewish handlers are happy. And my Jewish handler just chimed in while we were on here. She thanked me for something. Apparently she's suffering from some radiation sickness. She is really brainy, and she's really bare bones honest, and if I need correction or something, she'll go toe to toe with me, and it won't be any problem, you know. Anyway, I explained to her what had happened, and towards the end of it, she says, so that's the Jewish problem. The Bulgar up I want to say Egypt. No, he was actually in the Ukraine area, in Khazaria, actually, was the name of the country at the time. He wanted his people to be more loyal to him, and he wanted to be able to get along with his neighbors. On one side, he had the Catholics, and on the other side, he had the Muslims. And if he joined one side or the other side would go to war against him. And he realized that the Jews were getting along with everybody. Everybody got along with the Jews. So he decided to convert to Judaism. It's about 700 AD. What happens? His nobles are all going to convert to Judaism. And the Jews on Mount Edom still hold up there on Mount Seir, hear about this, and they migrate up north to help their new converts. to help their new Jews understand the faith, understand the religion. That wouldn't be too bad. But the problem is they took their DNA with them. And mind you, that would have meant a small portion of Khazaria would have had tainted satanic DNA. And by the way, from my reading, the big news is this. There was no Judeo-Christian heritage. Y'all talk about it like the Jews were here first. No, the Hebrews were named because they spoke the Hebrew language. They were named after Heber, Heber. You remove the H, make it silent, and it becomes Eber. Oh, Lord, which way do you want me to go with this? The big deal is this. To understand the Middle East, you have to think very common sense. And so this story that I'm telling you came from Edwin Kroger, whom we knew as Andy. So I asked Andy, I'm up in Alaska, I'm in Anchorage, and damn, it thawed out on the 1st of January. And the trees are budding, and the flowers are popping out, and I'm looking at these flowers going, hey man, you've been fooled, it's not time yet. It was a weird winter. The winds from the inner part of the state, from Galena, from Harp, were blowing right down through, warming us up. So we knew when Harp was running because the winds would come from the interior and blow down that way and bring this warmth with it. They built it there because there's a 4-foot in diameter natural gas line there. A lot of power. They need a lot of power for that thing. It's the most powerful ionospheric heater on the planet, as far as I know. The others may be bigger, but that one's got more power. So, the Edomites migrate up to Khazaria, and they bring their bad DNA with them, so that some of the people up there become part of that line, the satanic line. Get that right? It's through Gadriel. Now, just to put the screws to you so you can realize this, Gadriel was only one of the fallen angels. There were six leaders. Gadriel was one of the 6 leaders of the fallen angels. And I got that off Wikipedia, who removed it last summer because I called too much attention to it, and they didn't like people realizing that, hey, we just posted the truth there for all of these people. So Gadriel, Gadreel. There were 200 angels that fell to the earth that gathered on Mount Hermon and conspired to go into women. Now, I was told by the older guys more than a decade ago when I started on this journey and started really reading the Bible, that the Bible, the book of Genesis, was out of order. It wasn't written in the order it occurred. So I want to correct that for you now. It turns out that Eve and the seduction of Eve in chapter 3, Genesis, that occurred after the sons of God conspired to go into the daughters of men because they found they were fair in Genesis chapter 6. Now, I believe that's the original sin, and I believe it doesn't belong on Adam. They use our women to go after us all the time because the women can be fooled. They can be deceived. And they become deceivers. And I'm going to explain to you one particular line out of this Bible that you need to know. It's Genesis chapter 4, verse 1. I've struggled over this quite a bit. And I was very curious to see which God is going to be cited here in this Bible. Can't read it. Proper name version of the King James Bible is what it says in the cover. I wanted to know which guy that was going to be put in here, and it bothered me. But then I had to recall what my brother Andy had told me years earlier. Andy told me that Eve had been deceived, and she became a deceiver. It's an interesting principle. Be careful that you are not deceived and you become a deceiver. If you've been deceived, then fess up, own up, and go after the truth so that you don't carry around the seeds of somebody else's destruction and possibly your own. So Genesis chapter 4. And Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain and said, I have gotten a man from Yahweh. From Yahweh. It bothered me, but one has to realize this is paternity fraud. She's claiming she got the man from Yahweh. No. And Eve knew the fallen angel and her husband Adam. I don't have really good convincing data on this, do I? And that's okay. I don't mind being open-minded and being corrected and learning more. But this is extremely important that you realize that that's what's happened to America. They used the women to take us down. They came up with feminism, women's liberation, really, which amounts to no less. Okay. Somebody sent me another message. I'll try not to get distracted by it. So what I'm getting at is that we're all involved in this grand deceptive play that's been going on for an Earth age. Now, Douglas B. Vogt, V-O-G-T, wrote the book in 2007. He's a Jewish gentleman. Okay. Looking at his fruit, I'd have to say he's a good one. Not a bad one. Lorraine, down. Down. Kennel, down. Quiet. What did I say? Down. Being a bad dog. I have given her too much freedom, I guess. Lorraine, my puppy dog, but she's developing a better personality and she's liking people a lot more, which is good. But she's right. I got to get to fixing her breakfast, and I can tell that she needs to be let outside again. The generator's been running long enough so I can use it reliably for power. I would ask for prayers in getting this rig going properly and making it sound and ferreting out any problem that could compromise the integrity of the coach. That I definitely would appreciate. I'm also applying for a job. I want to be a special advisor, and I don't want to have to hassle with hanging out with political types. I don't like them very much, and they always pretend to like me, but they're all full of shit. I hung out with the attorneys at Gonzaga University, the attorney law students, because I wanted to become an attorney, and I didn't like them very much. And even the few that I liked, it was not a profession that I wanted to enter into. That my parents were very let down on, but I'm practicing law for myself, just the way we did it when the country started. And I urge you to take yourself out of this system as fast as you can. The sooner that we just follow the Chinese example, which is let it rot, and I've got to learn the Chinese words for that because I want to give them credit. I think there's nothing wrong with the Chinese people. I think it's their leadership that's the problem. Anyway, if you want to understand the Middle East, you have to think of it this way. There are two groups who pretend that they're absolutely mortal enemies. But at the highest levels, in secret, at the top, they're working together. And they're working together against their mutual enemy, against their target. Their target is the offspring of Adam and Seth. Seth became the son through which everything was passed on after Abel had been murdered by Cain. And these wicked people are just two seeds of Cain, the evil seeds. I like my theory better. I don't look at it as the seed of good and the seed of good and evil. I look at it, this is the seed of evil, and they are separated. So to understand the Middle East, you need to look at them and realize they're pretending to be mortal enemies, but they're not. And the giveaway is the Saudis in particular, because they are Jews. That's right. You need to understand we're being played. We're the ones they are after. And I don't want either group here. I don't want the Jews or the Muslims here. I don't want their temples here. I don't want their mosques here. They need to be in their own countries, and that's what's coming. And I think what it's going to take is basically a worldwide nuclear war, because they're going to hit the hell out of this country. They are going to knock the snot, piss, vinegar, shit, everything they can out of this country. Why? Because we scare them. And because they're jealous of us, and because they know we're on our knees. At the most, we're on our knees. They also know that we're so stupid, corrupt, and stupid evil at this point that we need to be put out of, it's like a rabid dog. It needs to be put out of its misery. I tell you, we need to get rid of the corporations, including the corporate governments and the corporate courts. We need to go back to organic, to common law courts. We need to go back to organic governments. And if we fail to do that, then we deserve to cease to exist. And if you think that we're not slated to be destroyed, you have something else coming. You're just a dumb asshole if you think that we're not slated to be destroyed. We turned our backs on Yahweh. So as much as I want to point to the Jews, in particular the bad Jews, the group that hides among them, it's really the synagogue of Satan, like it says in Revelations 2:9 and 3:9. I'm sorry, I'm just overboard with this. It bothers me too much. But there's very little I can do about it. I do not see this country repenting. I do not see us actually deciding that being upright, walking upright and in the faith and according to the Ten Commandments and doing the right thing, even when it costs us, it's the best course of action for us. I don't see us ever making that decision. I mean, we're too busy worshiping these transgenders that don't even tell you that they're transgenders. And then we've got the transgenders that tell you that they are transgenders. And thank God for that, because at least then you know. And I have more respect for the Thai lady boys than I do anybody else, because they'll tell you, lady boy. They insist. They identify as lady boys. They're being more honest than our own people, more honest than a lot of these female singers, these actors and actresses. You've got to remember it's a sordid profession. There were no women on the stage in Shakespeare's time. Why? They weren't allowed into the profession. It was all men. And you need to understand, there's a lot of stories in the Bible, and you need to read those and learn from those and learn to avoid the mistakes that those people lived and as they were set up. There's some pretty wild stuff in the Old Testament. You've got to learn it. You've got to know it. You're turning for salvation. I believe salvation is present tense. I believe it happens the moment you convert. But I don't believe you get to keep it. Because if you fail to honor the covenant, it's a conditional thing. It's not unconditional love. It's very conditioned. The Bible is very conditional. If you don't do this, then you die. If you do all of this stuff, then there's a good chance you're going to be able to make it. And I'm going to tell you right now, life goes on much longer than these little short things that we're living right now. Much longer. And there is the second death. And those people who have done more evil than good are going to be put to the second death. Their soul, their spirit, their electromagnetic field, that force field, their real essence will be destroyed. That's what we're after, is making it. Okay? The earth also goes through life cycles. And we've got the cycle coming up. We know when it's happening. But here's the problem. It's going to get crazier between now and then. It's not going to get more sane. Not until we at least start talking freely among ourselves. Not until we can talk about how the Jews deceived, well, a particular bad group of Jews deceived the world. And I don't even want to call them Jews. I think they're Edomites. Not every Jewish person is an Edomite. Remember, we judge them by their fruits. I think I've gone on here long enough. I've told you enough. So the people in the Mideast are busy pretending they are die-hard enemies. No, they're not. They're related. They're related brothers, related peoples, and they're going after those that they're jealous of, those that they have hurt and been chasing after for years. They're going after Adam and Adam kind. That's why it's the fight against the white supremacists. The only supremacists I know on the planet are Jewish supremacists. And believe me, I was reared on a community, in one of their communities for a few months, long enough, so I had it. They treated me so unfairly. They were so shitty towards me, and I'm grateful for that, because they revealed themselves to me when I was in 9th grade. And they have weaseled their way deep into the United States of America. And they don't believe in equality. They don't believe in fairness. Oh no, they have to do everything for their people, not realizing that they are basically controlled by a bunch of Roman senator families. You know, the survivors from 8 Roman senators. And there's other pockets and other groups. And there's a group of women behind the scenes that are actually running the whole show. It's also intertwined. There's so much there. It's so vast. Pray for my health that I can take care of it and get a little bit stronger, get some more of that mental clarity. I can't even think of the right word right now, but I had a tremendous vocabulary at one time, and even the Dragon dictation system didn't have a big enough dictionary for me. Every time I'd start off with that thing, it would have to enlarge the heck out of the dictionary. I'm kind of self-made in that I saw my weaknesses and I shored those up. My English wasn't so good. Even though it was my natural language, I was only at a 450 level. Math was 550. And then biology was 669. And it pissed off my Jewish teachers because I did better than their students did. And I had only read the book for 6 weeks. It's not good when all you do is read and you regurgitate it as if it was the doggone truth. There's so much to learn. And I'm going to go now because we've got almost 3/4 of an hour. And I got to start the heat. And I'm going to fix some food for me and the dog. I think I've given you enough information so that you should be able to take this and run with it. I've got a whole bunch of videos out there. A couple other channels were taken down and supposedly put back up. I don't keep up with those because technically you're only allowed to have 2. And 1 is confusing enough for me. I think that Google is part of the World Economic Forum, people. I think that the people in Silicon Valley are evil and wicked as can be. I think our country is totally controlled. We are run and dominated by the international Jews, the bankers, the Edomites, the people that have practiced these money frauds and honed them up over millennia. I've heard that there's one neighborhood out of Babylon that all these jackasses came out of it. I don't know the name of it. I haven't used it very much, but it seems to be quite true. And we do have the physicians, particularly out of Egypt, who were using poisons for a while, and it turns out their poisons came out of the oracle in Greece. We are dealing with real wickedness on the planet. And this idea that you're going to be able to, we're going to go to church on the weekend, they're going to tell us what to believe, and everything's going to be hunky-dory. No, baby, they're setting you up for a trap. Religion's one of the three demons that came out of the mouths of the beast, the second beast, and the false prophet. Religion was probably the first thing out of their mouths to control the people with. Man-made religion. The second thing, government. The third thing, education. The way I see it, if I was president, the people in the Department of Education would be going home today before noon. They'd be all fired. I would remove all funding for education, since it's not a proper education at all. There's no sense tossing good money after bad. So I would remove all federal funding for education. I would make it illegal for funding at the federal level for education. It needs to be returned to the states, who actually need to return it to the counties. And these school boards that they have, nothing but a bunch of baby communists learning how to lord it over others. Folks, you got a bunch of evil in the country, and you need to recognize it for what it is. You can separate it, maybe seclude it, but you can't ignore it anymore. And you have to judge. This bullshit about, who am I to judge? Who are you to judge? Dare you? You dare judge me? Yeah. Not only that, we're going to be judging angels in the near future. It's not very far away. Not at all. May Yahweh bless. May you read my version of the Bible, because you will make fewer erroneous assumptions from it. It's much better than the original King James edition, much more accurately translated. May Yahweh bless.